your comments this morning just remind us that, what we're talking about this morning is the outlook. And I was reading an article from a few days back that was throwing rocks at the EIA analysis and saying, oh, it underplays how rapidly coal will retreat from the market, fails to grasp the scale of growth for renewable energy. It paints a picture of the future few utilities and energy analysts actually expect to see. And I'm just reminded that whenever anybody gets out there and provides an analysis or an outlook, it is what you're dealing with at that moment in time. It's difficult to forecast what changes in policies we may see. So much of what all of you have outlined on the panel here this morning just reminds us that this is very much forecasting. In the political world, we pay attention to those pollsters that we think are usually right, and amongst the pollsters, they have little side bets, I think, as to who is closest to being right. Maybe we need to do some kind of a pool for our analysts to see how close we got to the mark at the end of the year. But again, recognizing that we have an opportunity at the policy level to help change some of this in ways that perhaps we can't even anticipate. So I wanted to ask about some of the variables that are out there. Obviously, a great deal of discussion and speculation about the impact of the situation in Venezuela as we're seeing those sanctions there. The impact, clearly, of the Iranian sanctions and how these all factor in. There have been multiple articles over the past couple days about what it means to our U.S. refineries and our ability here to do the mixing that goes on within our own infrastructure and structures. So, Dr. Capuano, Mr. Book, if you want to just comment real briefly on some of these external forces. I think you raised the issue, maybe both of you spoke to OPEC and that influence, but you have some truly external forces here that are difficult to factor in.
So we put out our Steel Monthly, which does adjustments for production changes or shocks to the market. And if you read our last deal, and our next one will be coming out in the next week, what we see are adjustments. So as production declines in some areas, we're finding that production in the U.S. will increase or production in other locations will increase. So we're finding that while it's disruptive, that there are adjustments that get made. And so the oil and gas is flowing. But the question around the refineries gets into fuel mix. Mm-hmm. So, of course, Venezuela has a heavy crude. Our refiners use the heavy crude in order to produce products. But there are other sources of heavy crude, for example, from Canada and others. And so far, if you read our STIOs, we're seeing that adjustments are being made. And while prices are changing modestly, that things are happening.
Good.
Okay?
Mr. Book?
And just to amplify what the administrator said, the heavy crude tends to price at a discount to the light sweet crude that is the benchmark price you see on TV. And so when refiners are bidding up for heavy crude, they're essentially buying a lower quality product that requires more processing. That eats into their margins. It happens to be occurring at a time when gasoline demand is weakening for a variety of reasons, probably some cyclical, some that I mentioned, efficiency-based. And so that's hurting their margins a little bit. Having to chase heavy crude around the world where it can be found means a frictional cost. If the sanctions have an unexpected effect of shutting down production at a far greater rate, then it isn't just a question of Venezuelan barrels not coming to the U.S., but it actually becomes a question of Venezuelan barrels not going into the world. And in that shortfall environment, the heavy price goes up still higher, and actually you start to see some sort of secular move throughout the petroleum pricing structure upwards, because in general, there's going to be less product in the world and folks are going to have to bid for it. The effect could still be very modest. There's a lot of dynamism in the system. One of the dynamics is that we have a strategic reserve. It's not perfect for heavy crude, but it could add to a volumetric shortfall. The other dynamism is OPEC. the partners that we have in the Middle East are sensitive to our economic situation and sometimes respond.
Thank you. Senator Manchin.